Welcome to another episode of the MMA Lock-Cast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMA LOTN. This week we're going to be going over UFC Milwaukee while quickly recapping UFC 231. I was at 231. I want to get into it, but you know what? I want to kick it off with the casuals like we always do, so I'll hold off on the 231 talk because I'm just, I can't contain it. I got the fucking shirt and everything. But, again, like we always do, first segment, the casuals with my man, Big Rob.
Hey, guys.
What up, what up? All right, so this week we got fucking Edson Barboza fighting. Everybody who knows Edson Barboza knows whenever you watch this fight, you're going to be in for a striking treat.
Okay.
It's always gonna be fun to watch in terms of like a stand-up war. This guy is a Muay Thai specialist. Fucking throws lightning fast kicks, lightning fast punches, and either he gets knocked the fuck out very brutally, or he knocks people the fuck out pretty brutally. And this was his first ever like knockout where it was like, okay, this guy's a fucking beast.
Okay.
UFC 142 against Terry Edom, July 14th of 2012. I still remember this. This is fucking nuts. But I'm going to be kicking it off at the 3:18 mark of the third round. And voila, let's go.
Okay.
That is Edson Barboza.
Okay.
In the white shorts. He's been pretty much winning this whole fight. You know, he doesn't really need to do anything crazy to win the fight. If he just, does this for three minutes, he wins the fight.
Okay.
But he wants to put on a show.
Whoa. We just kicked that guy. He just spun. And then it just connected.
It's not about me, it's about God.
Wow.
Not me, nothing. Jesus.
Wow.
Dude, that was the first time they've ever had a knockout like that in the UFC. Like, now people try it all the time, and there's been a bunch of people that have gotten it, but nobody had the balls to initiate it with that much intent to try to knock somebody out. At least nothing that I can recall from.
Is it because there's a lot of risk when you do that?
Yeah, but look how quickly he's able to do it. Boom. Heel to the fucking, like, pretty much temple cheek area. Like, that's immediate shut off.
He, like, put his arms down, it seemed like, almost.
He tried blocking it. And then, yeah, his hands just fell a little short.
Yeah.
Boom. One of the craziest knockouts ever. By far. I think probably the greatest KO of all time. So clean. And the way he drops. Look, all of his muscles are like that's how you know somebody's out. When you see all of their muscles just flexing and oh my God. Like, he was out. Like, he's still out pretty much.
Oh, yeah.
How nuts is that shit? And it was in Brazil. Like, in his hometown.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was, HSBC Arena. Fuck.
Wow.
Fucking insane. Let me pull that back. I just want to see that one. Like, oh my God. It still blows my mind to this date. And it's happened over 6 years ago. Almost 7.
Boom. Just like that. Down you go.
Now you know what it feels like to get hit really hard with a heel in that area. That happens. If you can hit it with that much precision at least, and that much power. That was fucking nuts.
I wonder if he could break his foot, because the head is really strong.
It is. There have been plenty of cases where guys have, broken their feet off of somebody's head.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely happens. One of the worst, though, is actually seeing when guys, when somebody goes for a body kick and they try to block it. Normally when you're in training, you have pads blocking the kicks, but these are slamming right into their forearm.
Oh.
And if they hit it hard enough, there's been plenty of cases where guys have broken their arm off that.
Oh.
There's been cases where guys throw spinning back fists.
Yeah.
And then the middle of their arm lands on the guy's forehead, and it just snaps.
Oh my God.
Yeah. There's some that you don't actually like see it, like it just happens internally. But then there's some where you'll just see like flop.
Oh.
Like the arm flop.
Does it ever come off?
Never seen it. I've seen one of the worst ones I've seen is Anderson Silva's leg break. I'm sure you've seen the.
Oh, that's what it was. It looked like it was just like
he kicked the guy, and then he like tried to step on it and just fucking, and yeah, it was dangling. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I've seen some gruesome injuries, but like. Thankfully, like, those are bones. Those can be repaired. The damage these guys take to their brain is just next level, though.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. That's when people talk about it so much, it gets me a little bit upset that I watch it, but it's so fucking entertaining. These guys know what they're going in for.
Yeah.
You know, they know what they're signing up for. They know the repercussions.
The risks
and they enjoy it.
Yeah.
And they enjoy it. So I fucking
sure.
look at that. Joe Rogan with hair.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? Fucking 6 years ago.
Wow.
And then he just said, fuck it. Just went with it.
Yeah.
All right. So that was Edson Barboza with Terry Edom, and that was the casuals with my boy Big Rob. Appreciate him helping out every week as he always does. We are going to get Robbie Woots back in here. It's going to happen. That motherfucker is busy. He might be working out. I don't know what the fuck he's doing, but we will get him back in here. So this past weekend, UFC 231. We'll quickly go over my bets, and then we'll just go over the event real quick. I had two bets. My dog of the night play was Matthew Lopez inside the distance. I had 0.5 units at plus 588, and then I had 1 unit on plus 475. I put the half unit on afterwards just to juice it up a little bit. You know, I thought that was a really good play. I thought there's a lot of value in it. I thought if Matthew Lopez was going to get the W in this fight, that it would be inside the distance. So I felt very confident taking that shot. Unfortunately, Brad Katona showed up. He performed better than I thought he would have. He's unbeaten for a reason. And Matthew Lopez just did not show up. Well, you know what? He showed up. He had a little bit of success, but Brad Katona just had the better night. So it is what it is. Minus 1.5 units on that. However, we're always here for the main show. We're here for the lock of the night play. That's the play that, almost guarantees us profit almost every event. And that's what I'm aiming for whenever I make these lock of the night plays. So for this event, we had Max Holloway against Brian Ortega. I'm surprised at the amount of people that were actually kind of against it. I got the play at minus 190. And it got down to minus 170 and minus 175, and I was a little bummed that I missed that price, but I thought that line was going to get worse as the time got closer. However, regardless, minus 190, still 2.63 units of profit off that one bet. On the event itself, I went 1.13 units, only a 17% ROI, but, a green. We're moving in the right direction whenever we're in the green, so I'm not too worried about that. This weekend we have UFC Milwaukee coming up, which I see a lot of potential for a lot of dog plays. I'm very interested to see, if some of these dogs become wider, which I think they will. If they do become wider, there may be a chance that I, take a poke at more than one. I'm just pulling up the odds real quick, but there's plenty of underdogs on this card that I'm very intrigued in. And I can't wait to see again if their odds actually even get better. But let's just kick it off from the bottom of the card. I haven't released any dog of the night plays or lock of the night plays yet. I'm waiting for the odds to play out a little bit more. I want to see where they go. And there's just a fuck ton of juice on this card. Like Zach Cummings was one guy that I was eyeing, but his price is just too much. It's tough to trust him, but we'll get into that fight when we get there. But kicking things off, we got Juan Adams against Chris De La Rocha. This is going to be a shit fest, probably the most entertaining shit fest that you'll ever see. Juan Adams, very bright prospect. The guy is huge. He barely makes a 266-pound limit. I think he's like 6'3" or 6'4". Or he's 6'5" actually, 81-inch reach. Somebody showed me a picture of him side by side with Cain Velasquez, and they look like they're in at least two separate weight classes, like two weight classes apart. It's ridiculous how big this guy is, and how he makes 266 is beyond me as well. However, he's still relatively green. The way he's knocking these guys out is just purely based on his power and athleticism. It's not as much about his technique or his skill, but the fact that he's so big, he's young, he's very explosive. That's enough for him to get these victories, and how he's gone 4-0 thus far. His fight against Sean Teed, Teed was able to get him down. He had slight amounts of success, but a guy as weathered as Chris De La Rocha, and who seems to have that veteran savvy, even though he's 5-2, which is crazy. He showed plenty of positive IQ or fight IQ things in his fight with Rashad Calder and in his fight with Adam Milstead, hence why those fights even went as long as they did. He took a lot of fucking shots, man. he took a lot of shots against both of those guys, but for some reason he was able to keep moving forward. He was having some success. He almost locked up a choke on Rashad Coulter at one point, but eventually he got the ground and pound victory at the end, or near the end of round 2. In this fight against Juan Adams, I can see him possibly eating whatever Juan is throwing at him, and I can see Chris De La Rocha kind of like marching through it. And at minus 350, which is what I believe Juan Adams currently sits at, minus 400 I'm seeing at 5 dimes. It's hard to put that type of money straight, or even in a parlay, for a guy who's as green as Juan Adams. Chris De La Rocha, very tough guy. He could eat Juan Adams' shots. He could take him down. He could possibly work some jiu-jitsu. The only factor here, again, is Chris De La Rocha is 39. He's very old, but he has kind of like that Dan Kelly vibe about him. Like he's beating younger guys for some reason. He might be able to beat Juan Adams here. I'm just not confident enough to waste any money on him. I'm not going to be betting him at all in this. Juan Adams, just too high of a price to even trust as well. So my official play is actually going to be Juan Adams. I think he does get him out of there. I think he's big enough to, when he gets Chris De La Rocha into like a full mount position, that De La Rocha won't be able to get out, and he might be able to just get a quick TKO victory there. Actually, you know what? I'll probably say maybe second round Juan Adams ground and pound TKO, but I would not play him at those odds. Next fight, we got Zach Cummings against Trevor Smith. Like I said at the top, I was considering Zach Cummings, who currently sits at minus 270 on 5 dimes. Better than the minus 285, minus 290 that he was sitting at earlier, but still too high of a price in my opinion. He showed that he can be bullied a little bit with some of the grapplers, and Trevor Smith is going to be the bigger guy here. I think he's 3 inches taller. He just has an inch or two a reach advantage as well. But Zach Cummings coming back up to middleweight after spending quite a long time away from middleweight as well. So I think he settled into welterweight pretty well. Had a couple losses here and there, but then he just didn't want to cut the weight as much. Now going up to middleweight, Trevor Smith, not the most skilled guy, but very gritty, very strong in the clinch, and I think he has the ability to make this a dirty enough fight where he can just push Zach Cummings against the cage and make it a tough night for him. I don't know how much he wants to take it to the ground, as Zach Cummings is very skilled on the ground, but his striking technique is kind of suspect. He's getting away with being very powerful. He dropped Nathan Coy and made it very difficult for Nathan Coy to get anything off, and then eventually forced Coy into a takedown, which he eventually got a pretty easy guillotine from. But with Trevor Smith, I think the size might play an advantage in this fight. And again, minus 270 on Zach Cummings, a little bit too high. I would consider a play on Trevor Smith at plus 230, but I don't know if I'll pull the trigger. I think there is value on Trevor Smith above plus 200. This fight should be a lot closer than that. Well, not a lot closer, but definitely not as wide as plus 230. So Zach Cummings is rightfully the favorite due to skill alone, but size and imposing physicality, I think Trevor Smith might show up a little bit more than people are expecting him to. But I'm gonna go out on a limb. Fuck it. I'm gonna say Trevor Smith by decision. I think that he grinds on Cummings and gets the victory. Next fight, Adam Milstead against Mike Rodriguez. Another fight where I was considering Adam Milstead, but the odds were way too high. Now he's currently sitting at minus 170, so it's getting a little bit closer. But after doing a little bit more tape on this, it's hard to trust a guy like Adam Milstead. Yeah, he had a close fight against Jordan Johnson, but with Mike Rodriguez, he's getting a guy who's going to bring the fight a little bit more. He's going to be the bigger guy in there too. 6'4", 82.5 inch reach, and he's a motherfucker. He won his Dana White Contender Series fight by flying knee and punches. Then he lost that decision to Devin Clark, but I don't think he needs to worry about Adam Milstead throwing any type of grappling threat to him. So I think it's going to be a fight highly contested on the feet. I think that Mike Rodriguez is going to have the heavier power and probably the better technique too. And I've heard a lot about Adam Milstead and his unfortunate situation in a sense. He's working 10 to 11 hours a day, doesn't have a dietitian, doesn't really have a real head coach or anything like that, but he's still getting away with somehow being in the UFC. However, I think that Mike Rodriguez is going to be able to pull off the upset this time around. At plus 150, I think he holds some value there. This fight should possibly be closer to a pick'em, so I definitely like Mike Rodriguez as a dog here. If I'm going to play him, I don't know. But my official play is going to be Mike Rodriguez by second round KO. Actually, fuck it. Let's call it first round KO. Next up, Dan Ige against Jordan Griffin. This is one of the few fights that I didn't get to look too much into. I thought that Dan Ige shouldn't really be trusted above minus 200. And against a guy who's as experienced as Jordan Griffin at 17-5, you know, maybe the line needs to be a little bit closer, hence why it's closing. He's given Juan Archuleta his toughest fight, who we know now as probably one of the toughest fighters out there. Multiple weight champion in other organizations, and now he's doing his thing in Bellator. But that's been his only loss. He lost to Dan Morad as well, and this is dating all the way back to 2012. So he has a relatively good record, and he might be worth an underdog play as well. But again, I wouldn't trust Dan Ige against a guy who's making his UFC debut and probably wants to make a statement as well with Jordan Griffin. So I'm going to take Jordan Griffin by decision. Not too much super technical analysis in there. I need to look more a little bit more into it, and I might actually do that if I can't really set on another underdog. But Jordan Griffin is another dog that I'm considering. It's funny that all these dogs that I'm talking about and possibly considering, due to the fact that somebody last week told me that this might be an all-favorite card. All the favorites are going to win. And once I saw the odds come out and saw, you know, how lopsided some of these are, I was very surprised that somebody even thought of saying that. I think there's a lot of intriguing matchups on here, and some of these lines are unjustly wide. Just my thoughts. Another fight where I think the odds are unjustly wide, but are, you know, starting to close now as well, is Jack Hermansson against Gerald Meerschart. Jack Hermansson, love the guy, you know, nicknamed the Joker, pulled out a great victory over Talisaitis in his last fight, hurt his rib in the second round, and you could clearly see it on his face. He was in pain. You know, kudos to the referee for not stopping it. You know, sometimes if they see something like that, they'll stop it and say it's a verbal submission, something like what happened to Joe Warren. I know he was caught in a submission, but still, like, you could do via submission via mount or whatever the fuck it was. But either way, Jack Hermansson, you know, he pulled it off with Talisaitis at the end of the fight, somehow managed to gain full mount and ground and pound him out, even with a broken rib. We saw how much he like folded in fucking agony after that fight as well, so you can see how much he was hurting. You know, he's dropped fights to Thiago Santos and Cesar Ferreira, but with this guy, with Gerald Meerschart, he's dealing with a guy that, you know, he could probably take advantage of the stand-up in this. I think he's the guy with the better movement. I think he has more pop in his shots. I think he's quicker. And I think that his unorthodox nature will bring a very interesting aspect to this fight, where I don't think that Gerald Meerschart is going to be able to solve that. Jack Hermansson also has the Greco-Roman background to be able to keep this fight on the feet if he wants to. I don't know how easy it's going to be for Gerald Meerschart to get him down, but he has a solid base in wrestling to keep this at a position where it's more beneficial to him. And I think that Jack Hermansson is going to be able to finish this on the feet. However, he was sitting at about minus 240 or minus 250, and I was highly considering Gerald Meerschart as well. However, that line is starting to close, and after watching a little bit more tape on these guys, you know, probably going to pass unless Joker gets even better than that. So if I were to bet this fight, I would bet Joker. But, you know, Meerschart's very, very experienced. I think he has 38 fights now. This is going to be his 38th fight. But Jack Hermansson just has the ingredients to give Meerschart some problems. So I'm going to take Jack Hermansson by, let's say, first round KO. I think that he drops Meerschart, follows up, stays composed on top, lands some more ground and pound, and gets the victory in the first round. Joaquim Silva against Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon's a guy that I've been very, very, very high on. You know, I love his style. What he did to Hakran Diaz alone. Somebody put up a picture of what Hakran Diaz looked like after their second round, and it looked like a man that went through 10 rounds of fighting. Like, he looked fucked. you know, Jared Gordon just brings that pressure. He brings that pace that's going to break people. And unfortunately, in his last fight against Diego Ferreira, he fought a guy that has better technical striking than him and has more power than him too. And he unfortunately paid for that. In this fight against Joaquim Silva, I think it's another case of that, but I think it's something that he might be able to figure out. He was severely injured in his last fight, apparently. Like, he almost, I think it was glass that cut his hand, and he almost lost 3 of his fingers, and it was fucked. Like, I don't know how recovered he was to be able to come back and fight a guy like Diego Ferreira that quickly. But in this fight with Joaquim Silva, it's about 10 months afterwards. I'm sure he's more than healed. I'm sure he's more than ready to go. I think he has the pace and ability to push a guy like Joaquim Silva and break him too. Joaquim Silva was coming off a split decision loss to Vince Pichel. Was it split? No, it was a unanimous, actually. It was a close fight from what I recall, but you know, he's coming off that loss back in January, so he's actually been out longer than Jared Gordon, which is interesting. So I like Jared Gordon here. I think he's going to be able to push the pace and, you know, have a vintage Jared Gordon type performance. He just needs to mind his P's and Q's on the feet. I think that Joaquim Silva has the better technique out of the two, but I think that's not going to matter in this fight where, you know, I think that Gordon's forward pressure and aggressiveness will not allow Joaquim Silva to be comfortable on the feet to be able to get his shots off, just as, you know, Khabib was able to pressure Edson Barboza, and Barboza wasn't able to get comfortable enough to let anything go. I'm not comparing Jared Gordon to Khabib, but I'm just saying in terms of their aggressiveness and forward pressure, this is the ingredient that he brings to this fight, and this is why I think he's going to win. I think he's going to win by decision. I think he'll just continuously pressure, and get the tap, or sorry, get the decision victory. So I got Jared Gordon there. Currently sitting at, his odds are closing down too. He's at about minus 155, so that's definitely something that I'm going to be looking at a little bit harder moving forward. Next fight, we have Drakkar Klose against Bobby Green, another line that's very pronounced in Drakkar Klose's favor. He's currently sitting around minus 275, minus 300 at most places. Bobby Green's a vet, man. He's so Drakkar Klose comes into this fight with 11 fights under his belt, whereas Bobby Green's coming in with 33. Bobby Green's been everywhere. Bobby Green's pretty much seen every type of style that's been thrown at him, and Drakkar Klose doesn't bring anything super unique. You know, he lost that fight to David Tamor, you know, clearly getting outclassed on the feet, and then he comes back and beats Groovy Lando Veneta. In this fight against Bobby Green, he could win. You know, Bobby Green at times shows a lackadaisical approach to some of his fights where he doesn't really push it that much, and he doesn't really come forward with much fight IQ, which is weird to say again for a guy that has over 30-something fights, 34 fights or whatever it was. But so it's tough for me to call this fight just because I'm not that big on Drakkar Klose. But if Bobby Green doesn't come out with any type of urgency or any type of, you know, any type of fuel to win this fight, I think he loses. I think that Drakkar Klose can just take it away from him by just like slowly piecing him up on the feet, but not doing enough to get a finish. And we know Bobby Green is tough as fuck. So Bobby Green has shown me nothing in the last couple fights that make me believe that he can win this fight. You know, he beat Eric Koch, but I think that Eric Koch's just, you know, beyond his time. I don't think that Eric Koch is the fighter that he used to be, and especially at the beginning of this year, it's hard for me to believe that Eric Koch is a top 15 guy. So just based off what we've seen as of late, I got to go with Drakkar Klose by decision. But with the line, again, being so pronounced in Drakkar Klose's favor, I just don't feel comfortable betting him either. Next up, we got Jessica Rose Clark against Andrea Lee. Andrea Lee, super highly touted, 9-2. You know, comes into this fight against a 9-5 Jessica Rose Clark. She's coming into this fight against, or after winning a fight against Veronica Macedo back in May. But, you know, against a fighter like that, I think that Andrea Lee should have performed a little bit better. It was quite a dominant performance, don't get me wrong, but she was getting tagged quite a lot from Veronica as well. I think that her physicality, she had one thing I will give Andrea Lee, her Muay Thai clinch and the knees that she's able to land just from that position alone, very, very good. It's very they're powerful. You know, they look like they do good enough damage. I know it takes the wind out of some fighters too, and she's very strong. However, this fight against Jessica Rose Clark, I think she's fighting the bigger lady here. I think that Jessica Rose Clark might be able to put up with the bullying style of Andrea Lee. I think that she's going to be strong enough to kind of counter it and make it a tougher fight for Andrea Lee. So if Andrea Lee's not able to get that grappling and that imposing style, if she can't get that going, she's going to have a rough night against Jessica Rose Clark, who could probably piece her up on the feet too. Like, it's weird how crazy the line is, and thank God that one's coming down as well. But we saw Andrea Lee reach, minus 300 level. That's a lot of disrespect for, Jessica Rose Clark. I don't think that Jessica Rose Clark is like top 10 or top 7, but I think that she has the tools and the physicality to beat and pull off the upset over Andrea Lee. I feel like I'm on almost all the underdogs here. But I like Jessica Rose Clark at this spot, but I still think that there is a discrepancy in skill. I think that Andrea Lee still is the more skilled fighter in this spot, but it's tough to full out choose or place a bet on this fight and be confident either way. Officially, I'm going to go with Jessica Rose Clark by decision, just due to the fact that the line is so wide and again her physicality. And the fact that she might have the strength advantage here. So my heart and my brain are slowly leaning towards Jessica Rose Clark, and at plus 215 or plus 230, there's definitely some value there. Next fight, Dwight Grant against Zach Otto. I'm just going to gloss over this fight real quick. I know a lot of people don't really give a shit about this fight. What am I talking about? Dwight Grant beat Tyler Hill on the Dana White Contender Series back in June. Finished him in the second round with punches. What's his odds right now? Dwight Grant, close to minus 300. Most of these lines are closing, which is a good sign, but Zach Otto is a tough out too. Unfortunately lost to Sage Northcutt in his last fight, which is fucking laughable, but I think he's much better than that fight showed. However, I do think he has his work cut out against Dwight Grant here, and I could see Dwight Grant putting off the second round finish, similar to what he did to Tyler Hill. Next fight, Charles Dobronx Oliveira against Jim Miller. These guys fought over 8 years ago, where Charles Oliveira was coming into this fight as he was unbeaten at the time, 14-0. Super fast rising star, was finishing guys with almost any and everything that he could get his hands on. A lot of submission victories, and then he came into this fight against Jim Miller. I think he was a pretty solid favorite in this fight too. Yeah, he was minus 155 going into that fight against a seasoned veteran in Jim Miller, who was only 18 and 2 at the time. That was a lot of disrespect for a guy like Jim Miller, who's a black belt in jiu-jitsu and probably just as good at jiu-jitsu at that time as Charles Oliveira was. And Jim Miller pulls off the upset. He gets the first round knee bar. Both guys are fishing for knee bars. It was a fun fight to watch, a lot of reversals, and then Jim Miller eventually gets the better of the exchanges and pulls off the knee bar with 2 minutes into the first round. But they've had a fuck ton of experience in fights in between that. It's been 8 years. Charles Oliveira has had his ups and downs. He strung together a 4-fight winning streak and then ran into Max Holloway, where he had that weird neck shoulder injury thing. That was in Saskatchewan as well. But unfortunately lost from there. He comes back and beats Miles Jury and then goes on another 2-fight skid. Right now he's coming off of 2 straight wins, 2 straight finishes over Clay Guida and Christos Giagos. But he runs into a Jim Miller who back then was 18-2. Now he's 29-12. So they've had plenty of experience. With that information alone, Jim Miller has gone 11-10 since that fight. So he's had a lot of ups and downs too. But I think that Jim Miller's jiu-jitsu is still up to par. He showed that in his last fight against Tony Martin when he got the submission. And a lot of people not Tony Martin, Alex White. I always confuse those two. But he came in as a very heavy dog. Why the fuck did I think that? Oh yeah, he opened very heavy, and he only closed out at plus 140 with Alex White. And a lot of people were counting Jim Miller out in that fight, and he showed that they really shouldn't. And I think the disrespect on his line at plus 257 now at Sportbet is ridiculous. It's only getting better too. I think that we could possibly see him hit plus 300. A lot of people are hot on Charles Oliveira now, who has plenty of experience since the first fight. I get that, but we've seen Charles Oliveira go for the door. We've seen when he breaks and he doesn't have anything more to give you. We've seen him, give up. And I think Jim Miller still has the grit, the jiu-jitsu, maybe not the chin, but I don't know how much you really have to worry about punching power with Charles Oliveira. I think it really comes down to the jiu-jitsu here, and to put up two black belts, one against the other, and yeah, Jim Miller being a little bit older now. How old is he now? He's 35, not fucking old, but he's still there. I think he still has the chops to be able to hold his own against Charles Oliveira in the jiu-jitsu game. Rightfully so, Charles Oliveira is the favorite. I understand that. And he is definitely way better than he was back then. But I truly think that plus 250 is way too wide in this fight for Jim Miller. I'm highly considering a bet on this fight. I want to see where that line goes and also where other lines go. But this is definitely one that's on my radar, and I don't think anybody should really be, hated on for taking a shot on this fight. A lot of people, are saying that Charles Oliveira is going to steamroll Jim Miller. I just don't see it. I think that he could win. I could definitely see him winning, but if it's going to come down to the jiu-jitsu, James Andrew Miller has a fucking shot. So, just for kicks, I'm officially going to pick Jim Miller. I think that he pulls off the submission in a back-and-forth jiu-jitsu type matchup, and he pulls off the upset here. So I'm going to take Jim Miller, but I would not be surprised at seeing Charles do Bronx do what he does and get another submission victory, which I believe is going to be, packing onto his record that he achieved in his last fight against Giagos. So I'm going to pick Jim Miller by first round submission. I think we see something similar, maybe second round we see the submission, but I think we'll definitely see some jiu-jitsu in this, and I think that people are going to be a little bit surprised with what Jim Miller ends up bringing to the table. So official pick, Jim Miller, first round submission. Next up, we got Sergio Pettis against Rob Font. Rob Font, rightfully so the favorite, minus 165. I think that even is a little bit too wide, though. He has the advantages here. He has the height. He has the power. He has the size. And they both pretty much are good at the same thing, which is stand-up. We've seen Rob Font pull off the submission before. I just think that he's going to have Sergio's number here. I think let's see what the reach advantage is. 71.5 for Rob Font at 69. So not too big of a reach advantage, but Sergio Pettis only stands at 5'6", while Rob Font is at 5'8". But I know once we see these guys face off and we see how big they are to one another, we'll see the clear advantage that Rob Font's going to have in this. And both, Rob Font, I think, has the better stand-up experience, whereas Sergio Pettis has the more creative taekwondo type of style. But I think that Rob Font has the nuts and bolts, the textbook technique to be able to beat a guy like Sergio Pettis. And I think it's going to be a little bit of a clinic. I could see Sergio Pettis having a little bit of success, but I could definitely see Rob Font even getting a finish in this, actually. So I'm going to take Rob Font by third round KO in a fight that he is pretty much winning the entire way, just with his technical, his kickboxing and his Muay Thai. So, yes, Rob Font. Also, something that I want to introduce that I finally got my man Rob to do, more so me loafing. But if anybody ever has a problem, there's one guy that's been on my comment section a bit. I'm not going to give him any shine or any praise, but all I want to say, there we go. Fuck you. I'm going to be using that a little bit more often. There's going to be some times where I'm a little bit skeptical of some people's opinions when they're talking about certain fights, and Jim Miller and Charles Oliveira being one of them. So anybody who does, who thinks opposite of what I think of this Jim Miller fight, Damn right. All right. Co-main event time. A fight that I'm very much looking forward to is an Edson Barboza against Daniel Hooker. Yes, this man's name is Hooker. Poor guy. It's all good. He probably got bullied all throughout childhood in New Zealand, which is where he's from. Isn't it like Australia, New Zealand? It's all like convicts and shit, right?
I wondered about that too, because maybe that's why he got into fighting. People teased him a lot, and he got good at it.
He's a bad motherfucker too. Yeah. Really, really good fighter, and that's why a lot of people get into this shit too. There's a lot of people that say they just got into fighting due to bullying. Joe Rogan talks about it a lot too.
Totally,
fucking got into it because of bullying. So yeah, especially guys with the name Daniel Hooker, I can definitely see that. Edson Barboza, however, we saw him take a man's life earlier in the podcast. He goes up against Daniel Hooker. I'm very surprised at the amount of love that Daniel Hooker is getting. He opened up as the favorite. The one thing that you could say about this is that Edson Barboza has taken a lot of damage in his last couple fights. I get it. Cool. But I don't know if that's going to mean that, like, he's immediately done or his chin is completely shot or, he's still not the devastating and fast striker that he's known to be. In this fight against Daniel Hooker, I don't know if Daniel Hooker is going to be able to get the fight to the ground. I think that Edson Barboza's takedown defense is very good, but against guys like Kevin Lee and Khabib Nurmagomedov, it's not going to be that good. But Daniel Hooker's base is not wrestling. I think that Edson Barboza is going to be able to keep this fight on the feet, and that's probably where Daniel Hooker wants it as well. But I think that Barboza is just going to be the better fighter here, or the better striker. And I truly believe he is the better striker here. I think he's quicker. I think he's, his love for the leg kicks is going to be a very big factor in this fight too. I think that he takes the juice out of Daniel Hooker's forward pressure and his movement and his offense, and he stifles it. I think those leg kicks are going to be a huge issue for Daniel Hooker in this fight, and I think that we see a very composed and smart Edson Barboza in this fight. We may get a finish later in the fight, but I could just see him trying to just be methodical. Very, very technical with the striking and just picking apart Daniel Hooker, starting with the leg kicks, and then eventually putting his hands together and just kind of having a field day almost. Not to say that Daniel Hooker, won't have his moments. I think that Hooker will show why he is getting such a big matchup. But wins over guys like, he has, he's had a decent resume. He knocked out Gilbert Burns, somebody who doesn't have the best striking, very wild with his punches, knocked him out in the first round. Jim Milner, I say what I say about him with his jiu-jitsu and all that, which is great, but his stand-up, not the best. Hence why he got kneed to oblivion by Jim Miller. Mark T. Casey, really good striker, got a submission victory over him. Ross Pearson, on the tail end of his career in June of 2017, he was able to have the fight that he wanted. We knew it was going to be a stand-up fight. That's what Ross Pearson wants to do, for it to be a stand-up fight. But when he's given up so much reach and height and even skill when it comes to striking, obviously Dan Hooker is going to have his way with him. So that 4-fight winning streak, as impressive as it is, and they've all been finishes, I still think that he hasn't fought anybody like Edson Barboza. He fought Yair Rodriguez, lost to a decision, but even Yair is not the type of striker that Edson Barboza is, and I think that that's going to be the difference maker here. So I'm surprised as to why the Edson Barboza is still the underdog. It's a very close line right now. Most places have them at even. Pinnacle has Edson Barboza at plus 102. I'm going to monitor that line over the next couple days. I'm very intrigued as to where that's going to go. If Daniel Hooker is going to get more love closer to the fight, a part of me thinks that Barboza is going to start to get the love a little bit more because he's the more known guy, some people might not think about the Khabib and Kevin Lee fights as much, but I truly think that this fight should actually have Edson Barboza slightly favored, because again, the damage that he took, it could be a concern, but I don't know how much of a concern it's going to be in this fight, where it's mainly going to be stand-up. So my official pick is going to be Edson Barboza by decision. I think we see a masterful performance from him, and we start to put his wrestling deficiencies behind us once we start seeing him fight actual strikers. Next up, main event time.
Yeah.
Main event always deserves horns. How many horns depends on how significant of a fight it is. So it only gets one one horn. Last week we had 3 horns for Max Holloway and Brian Ortega, and rightfully so.
True that.
But this one, it's a decent fight. It's a rematch. They fought back in 2014, Kevin Lee and Iaquinta, or Iaquinta, however you want to pronounce it. Since then, Kevin Lee has dropped 2 fights to Leonardo Santos and Tony Ferguson, whereas Iaquinta has a little bit more of an up and down path. Actually, he's only lost twice. Why do I feel like he's lost more than that? He's pulled out a lot of fights. He has a lot of drama with his contract and not wanting to fight for the UFC and wanting to get paid more money and all this shit. But here he is in a main event spot, especially in his last fight where he came in as the replacement for Tony Ferguson to fight Khabib in the main event. So say what you want to say, and Iaquinta can whine all he wants. The UFC is giving him opportunities to, make the most off his name. So since his last fight against Kevin Lee, he lost to Mitch Clark by Darce choke in the next fight. Then strung together 5 straight wins, and then ran into Khabib Nurmagomedov in a last-minute fight where he was actually supposed to fight Paul Felder. With Iaquinta, we know we're getting a heavy puncher. He has a decent wrestling base, but the main thing that he's looking for is the knockout. He's fun in that aspect where he's always coming forward and trying to put the fight on you push the fight onto his opponent, but against guys that have strong wrestling like Khabib Nurmagomedov, and I call him, Khabib is probably the best wrestler in lightweight right now, and then second would be Kevin Lee, and this is going to be a tough matchup for Iaquinta and dealing with that wrestling. I don't know if he's made it, he gave Khabib a little bit of troubles in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round, and Khabib was forced to, fight the rest of the fight on the feet, which he still won, due to the fact that Iaquinta was still hesitant and scared of the takedown threat. I think that's going to be the same thing in this Kevin Lee fight, whereas I think that Kevin Lee has slightly better striking than Khabib, but the one issue also is I think Kevin Lee has shown that he can be rocked in the past, and I think Iaquinta is going to be able to land on him too. I just don't trust Al being able to land that one-hitter quitter shot. I think that Kevin Lee is going to be able to impose his grappling and his clinch right away. He's going to be able to get this fight to the ground. And I think that he has better top pressure, or at least in terms of keeping the fight on the ground, than at least Khabib does. So I think that he's going to have the advantage there. I think that's where the fight's going to be contested at most, is the clinch and Kevin Lee closing the distance. And I just don't see how Iaquinta is going to be able to combat that. With that said, I'm not comfortable laying minus 310 on Kevin Lee. The odds definitely are too wide on that, so I wouldn't bat an eye at anybody that's betting Iaquinta in this spot. He has that path to victory, which is his power, and the solid enough wrestling base to be able to keep the fight on the feet for a certain amount of time, or be able to shuck him off a little bit later into the fight. But I don't think that's going to be much of an issue for Kevin Lee, as I think he's just grown leaps and bounds since the last time they fought. So he's 13. What's Kevin Lee at right now? 17-3. And when he fought Iaquinta, he was only 6-0. So he's tacked on a lot of experience since the last fight. Whereas Iaquinta, he's been fucking a real estate agent. He's been doing all this random shit and not fighting as much. Whereas Kevin Lee has just been growing ever since. So my official play is actually going to be Kevin Lee by, I'm going to say by decision. I think it just grinds Iaquinta out. Iaquinta's super tough, so I don't think that he'll look for the door. So I'm going to take Kevin Lee in a pretty, maybe he drops 1 round or drops 2 rounds, but I think he wins a comfortable unanimous decision. And Motown Phenom wins and moves forward in the lightweight division, which is still kind of up in the air. We don't know what the fuck's going on with Conor, Khabib, Nate Diaz, Dustin Poirier, Tony Ferguson. Realistically, they should be doing Khabib versus Tony, but that's just, now they're throwing Max Holloway into the discussion to come up to 55. Fuck all that noise. Just let's sort out what's going on with Tony Khabib, and then we'll see from there. Simple. You want to bring Conor back? Let him fight Nate Diaz. Done. That's all I want to say on that. So that's pretty much the breakdown for UFC Milwaukee. It's the last show they're doing on UFC on Fox as well. They're going over to ESPN as soon as 2019 hits. So I'm not sure how much it's going to change in terms of a Canadian viewing experience. From what I heard, they're still going to be broadcasting on TSN, which means that it's going to be available on Fight Pass. So I'm covered. I don't know how people in the States are going to be affected, but good luck. Hopefully you guys are still able to watch it, and you guys are able to get ESPN Plus, which is where I heard they're going to have most of their fights. But I'm very excited to see where ESPN is going to be able to take these guys and how far they can, where Fox left it. Are they going to be able to take it further, or are they going to be taking steps back? Who knows? Like, ESPN is pretty much the sports leader in the States, so they should be able to do big things with it. But again, to what extent, I have no idea. Lock Fight League wraps up this week. Wednesday, which is tomorrow, is going to be the bantamweights. We're going to get that done with. Somebody's going to win $75, and then on Sunday, somebody's going to win $80 once we conclude the light heavyweight tournament. I believe I'm going to be switching it up for season 4. I'm thinking of just taking it down to one division. Doing 2 divisions is kind of, it's kind of tough. I have a really tight schedule, and just to even get that extra hour for my my time back to even dedicate to tape study or even dedicate to other shit that I need to get done, I think is going to be very useful. So next season we'll go down to one division. We'll make it a full $10 entry fee, and that should be fun enough. Once a week is more than enough for you guys. Just don't ask too much. Until then, my picks are going to be up soon. I think I'm going to lock in my plays tomorrow. They got the fight doesn't go to decision odds out, so I'm definitely going to be taking a look at that. But I plan on having my dog of the night play and maybe 2 lock of the night plays locked up by Wednesday, and then the fight goes down on Saturday. So, yeah, next week we're off. We're off next week. I might just still come by and say what up, say what's good, see what my man Big Rob's up to. And then the week after that is the last event of the calendar year for the UFC, which is UFC 232, Jones versus Gustafsson. I'm so fucking psyched for that fight. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all I got. Let me just get some fucking horns in here. Anybody that's going to hate on this episode, I'm out. Later.